hours of WGBB. Live from Merrick, New York. This is Sports Talk 1240.
And that's right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Sports Talk 1240, right here on WGBB New York in Long Island. This is the first Sports Talk 1240 of the brand new year 2020, as we kick off a brand new decade, brand new week, and the NFL playoffs are upon us. We have Wild Card Weekend just wrapping up with a great game between the Eagles and the Seahawks. We'll be getting into every single one of those games. All four of them, one-score games that just came down to nail-biting and just exciting playoff football. It's exactly what you want in a first weekend for playoffs. And boy, every single game delivered. Two of them went to overtime. A lot of fun if you're watching football this weekend. Like I know, my good friend the Golden Goose, Paulie from Levittown, was watching that. No doubt about that. Now, when we get to this time of year now too, as like I said, the playoffs are upon us. Everything gets ramped up to the next level. We all know that. And but before I get into that, I just want to say thank you for tuning in here. I'm your host Rob Kramer, and I'm here for the first time this year, obviously, and I'm very excited to be back. WGBB, love this place, and you know we got a lot to get to tonight because not only did the football go down where it was just a great week in playoff football, but there's so much other stuff going on right now. Also in football, not playing in the playoffs, the Dallas Cowboys fired their head coach tonight, Jason Garrett. If you haven't heard yet, the news just broke actually during the final playoff game this weekend. So Dallas will be looking for a new coach, which apparently they were doing anyway, even when Jason Garrett was still under contract. Very strange situation there. But also, we got to talk about the New York Yankees signing Garrett Cole to a record-breaking contract, 9 years, $324 million. The Yankees finally got their ace. There's nothing else you could say about that. That team is incredible. A lot of people are pinholing them for the World Series next year. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but this certainly doesn't hurt their chances. On the other side of town in Queens, the Mets made a big signing, bringing Dylan Betances. I think that's a great move. That's exactly the type of guy the Mets need in this bullpen. He's the first pitcher in Major League history to strike out 100 batters out of the pen for 5 straight years, 14 to 18. So, there's a lot to like about this signing. And it's not high risk either. It could really be a 1-year deal. I know you're paying him $10 million, but looks good. That's something we'll get into in a little bit as well. Also, how much better are the Knicks playing ever since they fired David Fizdale? I mean, I don't think it's all on Fizdale. I think, I think Mike Miller is doing a good job. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but I also think that the firing of Fizdale kind of woke the team up. I think they were kind of sleepwalking through the first 20 or so games of the season when they started off 4-18 under Fizz, and now in the last 12 to 15 games, they've gone 6-7 under Mike Miller, and they're playing much better. But I think they're playing closer to what their potential was, what everybody thought was coming into this season. Tough loss today, though, out west in LA to the Clippers. We'll get into that in the second half of the show. The first half's going to be mainly football. But before we get into that, check out Sports Talk 1240 on Facebook. Give us a like over there. Go to sportstalk1240.com. Check out everything we have to offer on there as well. All the old shows, all of our hosts, anything else you'd like to know. And, you can check out Sports Talk 1240 on Twitter as well and give us a follow. But just getting to this football now, as, there's so many. There's 4 great games this weekend. We had the first game was the Bills and the Texans on Saturday afternoon. It was two close teams. I mean, in talent, in coachability. You have two very. Bill O'Brien is a coach that a lot of people were expecting to drop the ball again this weekend, and boy, did they give Buffalo the chance to win this game over and over again. Buffalo was up 16-0 and blew this game. Uh, they ended up having a great drive by Josh Allen in the at the end of the game, at the end of regulation to just get it downfield and uh, to kick the field goal and to take it to overtime. But, Josh Allen started off this game so well. And in the second half, the late third quarter, and for most of the fourth quarter, he just looked like a rookie, and I guess it was bound to happen at some point. He was bound to turn back into a pumpkin. He turned into a pumpkin all right, and especially when he tried to do that back lateral that luckily for him went out of bounds. But boy, he looked real sketchy at some points. But also plenty of coaching decisions to question. I feel like that Buffalo left a lot on the table. The final score was 22-19 in overtime, the first of two games to go to overtime this weekend. Like I said, Josh Allen, good start, bad end, and that sack in the third quarter by J.J. Watt. Now, J.J. Watt, I don't know if you even have heard about this, if you haven't been paying close attention to Houston, but he's been out for the last half of the season. He had to have surgery. They said his season was over. They said there's no way he was going to come back, and he shows up on Wild Card Weekend and has an immediate impact. That sack down 16-0 somehow ignited this team. And then the next thing you know, Deshaun Watson's driving this team down the field, plowing his way into the end zone, getting the 2-point conversion, cutting it to 16-8. They kicked the field goal, made it 16-11, and the next thing you know, they were up 19-16. So it was just a crazy, crazy game over there in Houston, which a lot of people expected the Bills to pull that one out, and it looked like for most of the game that the Bills had that one in the bank. Just a disappointing loss for them, and as we continued on, speaking of disappointing losses, I think Las Vegas and a lot of people lost a lot of money this weekend because the New England Patriots are out of the playoffs wild card weekend for the first time since 2009. This is the first time they've been knocked out before the AFC Championship game since the Jets knocked them out in divisional round in 2010. So it just goes to show you how long it's been that the Jets played a playoff game. That seems like 2 lifetimes ago. But with the Titans and the Patriots game, it really came down to obviously the end was 2013. The Titans took the game. They won it. They went to Gillette Stadium in New England. They won that game. It was a devastating loss for a Patriots team that looked severely lacking on offense, which you're not used to seeing with one of the greatest all-time quarterbacks. A very capable backfield with White and Sony Michel back there. Julian Edelman, who had a huge drop in this game. But he's still one of their better or more talented players on their team, and just like a lot of the guys on the team, they didn't get the job done. They didn't get the job done in this game. They ended up losing 20-13. Like I said, the first time they lost in Wild Card Weekend since 2009, that was against Baltimore, a Ray Rice-led team. That shows you how long it's been for that, too. There's a lot of questions about Belichick and Brady at this point, but before we get to that, I do want to really highlight and pat on the back Derrick Henry, former Alabama running back, second year in the league. Derrick Henry, watching that guy play running back, man, I mean, he has been on fire since, I'd say, week 14 or so of last season. In most fantasy leagues, Derrick Henry was getting dropped for 3/4 of the way through the season last year. Nobody had faith in the guy. He looked like, he could break a decent run every once in a while. Nobody was thinking that it was going to be like yesterday where he was breaking a 53-yard run taken to the house. This guy, Derrick Henry, is a very talented running back. He reminds me kind of what, the way he's playing right now, it reminds me of, the Rams, how they played and how they rode that team to the Super Bowl last year with just a great running game and a capable quarterback. And Ryan Tannehill, sans Adam Gase, is seeming like he's a very capable quarterback. He looks like this guy knows, how to manage a game and win a game when it comes down to it. And, you got to remember, too, when the Adam Gase-led Dolphins made the playoffs. What was it, 3 years ago? I guess at this point, and Tannehill was his quarterback for most of that year. He was hurt come playoff time. They had to start Matt Moore in the playoffs. So this was Tannehill's first playoff start. This was his first opportunity. Unlike Kirk Cousins, who before today had played a playoff game before. He lost as a starter for the Redskins. He also played in relief of RG3 in 2012 for that playoff game they had too. He had about, I think, 10 attempts, or he took a bunch of snaps in that game too after RG3 got banged up. And don't sleep on the Titans. They're a very well coached team, and you also have to pat their coach on the back, Mike Vrabel. Just completely at the end there, he out-coached Belichick, which is stunning to say because nobody does that to Belichick. He's the best coach of all time. But man, I'm telling you right now, he was out-coached by his former linebacker Vrabel, who, when they were punting the ball, a lot of people, and probably including myself, would have gone for that 53-yard field goal or 54-yard field goal, whatever it would have been. But Vrabel, knowing his team, knowing his kicker, knowing the situation, said to himself, there's no freaking way that my kicker is hitting this from here. And with a 14-13 lead and just about 6.5 minutes left in the game, he chose to take multiple penalties. And luckily for his team, the Patriots ended up taking a penalty at one point too, which reset it, allowing him to take one more penalty. And they ended up, instead of giving the ball to Tom Brady with over 6 minutes left in the game and a chance to do some major damage, they ended up getting that ball to under 5 minutes left. I think they got it back with about 4:45 left, and they just didn't have enough time on the clock. And when it came down to it, obviously 4.5 minutes is more than enough time for Brady to go down the field, but the task was too tall at that point. And when it came down to it, and the both defenses played very well yesterday, no doubt about it. But the Titans just made the plays and got the job done. You got a Pat Vrabel on the back, who, like I said, took those penalties, drawing them back. He took a delay a game. He had his guy do a false start. He was going to have him do another false start, and it was just great tactical coaching there, knowing the rule book inside and out, and he outcoached the genius up there in New England, and that doesn't happen very often. So tip of the cap to Mike Vrabel. And, continuing on to the NFC today. Now, the Vikings took out the Saints today. You really have to feel for the Saints. I mean, I know they won a Super Bowl in the last 10 years, so as a Jets fan, I'm not exactly sobbing for them too much. But, you got to feel for Saints fans because they got screwed the last two playoff games. That play at the end of the game, the final score was 26-20 Vikings. It was the second game that went to overtime this year. Just a really great regulation back and forth between these two teams. But the Vikings started overtime with the ball, drove it down the field, and the rules state in overtime now, the NFL, that all you have to do is score a touchdown. If you get the ball first, score that touchdown, game over. You kick a field goal, the other team gets a chance. Well, they drove it all the way down the field. This guy Thielen is such a great receiver, and Kirk Cousins, who was much maligned for many good reasons, coming into this season, especially after the down year they had last year, and he just completely put the team on his back. You had Stephon Diggs looking like he was mad for a lot of the time, or the first half he wasn't even targeted one time. He ended up coming up with a bunch of big catches. Not as many as he'd want probably, but man, Thielen stole the show today, getting them down to the 2-yard line as Kirk Cousins aired it out. But the play that I was talking about earlier was the play in the corner of the end zone that ended the game. As Cousins rolled out, he was able to hit his. Apparently, they said in post-game interviews that he was the second option, or it might have even been the third option, to be honest, but he definitely wasn't the first. And he hit Kyle Rudolph, the tight end, former Notre Dame tight end, Kyle Rudolph, in the back of the end zone. He hauled it in, but Rudolph, though, had a push off. And if you look at it, look, I'm not one of these guys. I don't like to. I don't like when the refs decide games. I don't, so I don't mind them not throwing a flag there. But if that was a Jet game, and that happened against the Jets, and I'm looking at things that where guys have been called for push-offs in the past. Now, push-off, what I'm saying is that the receiver pushed against the defender to gain an advantage. And you have to remember, too, you have a 6'6", 230-pound tight end going up against a 6 foot, 195-pound defensive back. And, when you get shoved like that, that gives you an unfair advantage, which is why it's a penalty in the first place. And that looked exactly like what Kyle Rudolph did. So, to be fair, while I don't like all these ridiculous penalties, which, if you're an NFL fan these days, I'm sure you're sick of penalties and unnecessary flags and then throwing flags and picking up flags. So I'm sure that a lot of people are happy that there wasn't another yellow flag thrown on this play. But to be honest, if I was a Jet fan, I'd be very mad. And for it to happen again to the Saints for the second time in a calendar year, last year cost them a chance to go to the Super Bowl, where that was just flagrant. That was ridiculous that it wasn't called last year. And I was actually live on the air last year during that, watching all that stuff live unfold in front of us, and that was insane during the NFC Championship game. But this year they ended up getting screwed by the refs again. It might not have been as bad, but it doesn't hurt any less. I'll tell you that much if you're a Saints fan. So you got to feel for that organization, and also the Seahawks and the Eagles today. Russell Wilson, just one of the most clutch quarterbacks of this century, at least. You could put him up there with some of the greats. From these modern greats and everything, he's etching his name in NFL history every time he goes out there and gets the win. He needs that second Super Bowl though to separate him from the pack a little bit history wise. But him and Pete Carroll, they've been quite the tandem down there or up there in Seattle, and they won 17-9 in Philadelphia today. Unfortunately for the Eagles, Carson Wentz got hurt in the first quarter as Jadeveon Clowney's knee ended up hitting him in the back of the head when he was down. I don't know if it was a concussion or a neck injury. They were calling it upper body at one point. I don't know if that sounds like a hockey injury to me, but that's something that will be determined whether he was concussed or not. But either way, he missed the rest of the game. And former Jet backup quarterback and Sam Darnold mentor, Josh, Josh McCown. I was going to say Matthews. Josh McCown ended up finding his way back in the game and playing the rest of the way. He is just another, just one of these guys that goes out there and he just competed, man. At one point, he was 14 for his first 17. And he did not look uncomfortable out there. Obviously he's not going to give you the ability to run and be mobile inside and outside of the pocket that a young guy like Carson Wentz, who has good legs under him, and so that's when you have to alter your game plans a little bit, and not to mention too, Philly was extremely shorthanded coming into this game. Alshon Jeffrey's down, Nelson Aguilar's down. So many of these guys that they've depended on over the years are out. And, Deshaun Jackson, too. So, that was a very tough thing for the Eagles to come in, but they competed. They stayed in there. They, up until their last drive, pretty much, they had a chance to at least tie and be in this game. So, and you got to give it to their defense, too, for holding Seattle to under 20, giving their team a chance to win, and just doing everything in their power to give this team a chance for victory. And but just to now we go on to the divisional weekend next year, or next week. I'm sorry. We've got a lot of great games coming up next week, as the so many the one thing, if you're looking at the NFL playoffs, the Bills were a hot pick, because their defense, Also, obviously, everybody was going with the Patriots. Um, and the Saints too. So many people, including myself, I didn't think that the Saints were going to lose. I thought the Saints were going to be a team on a mission this year. I thought they were at least getting back to the NFC Championship game. But there's a lot of good teams out there this year now. The NFC. Um, it, we still haven't seen the Niners. They're one of the best teams in football, no doubt about it. Also on the AFC side, we're going to be seeing the Baltimore Ravens next week, which is just going to be another great test. The Green Bay Packers for the another big NFC team that we didn't see this week. So there's going to be a lot of great matchups next week in the NFL as we see exactly what is coming up right now. And if you were looking at it right now, it's such a tough pick to see who's going to be in this this whole like if you were looking at it right now, who would you think is going to be in the Super Bowl? It's such a tough pick because a lot of the guys or a lot of the teams that were picked are out now. Who would have thought that on a day or on a weekend, I'm sorry, where you have Breeze and Brady going, and they're both going home after one game. Both going home after one game. And also you had another 40-year-old quarterback, McCown, like I was saying before. It would have been funny if the Eagles pulled that out today, and of the three 40-year-old quarterbacks, the only one to pull out a victory would be Josh McCown. That would have been, that's another sports thing for you. But, it didn't surprise me at all. That the Eagles lost, especially after Wentz went down. That was a tall order, and the Seahawks are a class team. So, don't be surprised if you see the Seahawks in a championship game, which would mean that another 13-3 team, because the Saints are already out, team in the Green Bay Packers wouldn't be there, and it also means that there's a possibility that because next week it's the Packers and the Seahawks. Now this is a thing that these guys have been going since Brett Favre was there and Matt Hasselbeck was the quarterback. This has been a playoff rivalry that's spanned the last couple of decades, and especially as the NFC Championship game, where when the Seahawks went to their last Super Bowl, they beat the Packers too, and the Packers helped them. Packers did everything they could by choking that game out in the final minute or two of that game in regulation and giving the Seahawks a chance to come back. And so like I was saying, there's a lot of great stuff to get into with the NFL. We've got a great slate of playoff games next weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. The divisional playoffs are upon us now, and before you know it, it'll be Championship Sunday and then the Super Bowl. So, there was 11 games left in the overall 11 games. Now you take 4 out, so we're down to the final 7 now. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of big games left to check out now, and it's going to be hopefully that divisional weekend is as good as wildcard weekend was. So with that, we'll be taking our first break of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And before we take our break though, I want to give you something that I came into last month. Have you heard of Homefields.com? Homefields.com, HOMEFIELDS.com, is one of the best websites that I've ever found. If you're looking for a gift for the sports fan in your life, Homefields.com is the answer. They have any old school, new school stadium you can think of in any sport. Baseball, hockey, football, basketball. They've got stadiums that don't exist anymore. They got like for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Ebbets Field. They got old Madison Square Garden for the Rangers if you're a hockey fan. Old Yankee Stadium. I just got the 1923 version of Yankee Stadium for my uncle, and he absolutely loves it. What Homefields.com is, it's a handcrafted it's a handcrafted model of a stadium that is lit by LED lights. And what you can do is use my promo code Kramer. That's Cramer, Kramer, and you'll get 10% off your order today. These are beautifully made, models, and you can check them out. They have 9-inch models, 13-inch models, and bigger. You can check them out. Beautifully handcrafted items. Use my promo code Kramer. That's homefields.com. Don't forget, homefields.com today.
Go to a break, or back to you? Back to you?
Please. No, break. Break.
You're listening to AM 1240. WGBB.
Specialists in sports medicine and wind injuries. Country Foot can be reached at 516-741 or online at countryfootcare.com.
Want to advertise your business on Sports Talk 1240? Place an ad on sportstalk1240.com and run a radio commercial during the show every Sunday night here on AM 1240 WGBB. Our rates are very affordable. We'll even produce the radio commercial for you. Just head over to sportstalk1240.com and fill out the Contact Us form and let us start promoting your business today.
Unflippable, unflappable, unleakable. The Gusbuster is the only umbrella that won't flip inside out, rip, tear, or leak. Capable of withstanding winds over 55 miles per hour. All of our umbrellas are constructed of the finest quality materials and backed by a limited lifetime guarantee. What are you waiting for? Visit Gusbuster.com and get your Gusbuster today. Stay connected to Sports Talk 1240 by following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Sports Talk 1240.
You're listening to Sports Talk 1240, broadcasting every Sunday night beginning at 8 p.m.
Hey,
Right
Brian,
here on Long Island
I'm gonna do the song after I do this day in sports history. Okay, I'll give you the point. Thank you.
And now back to the show.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Sports Talk 1240. And this is This Day in Sports History. On this day in sports history, January 5th, 1920, the news finally broke that Babe Ruth had been actually sold from the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees for a price of $125,000. The Yankees came out and said that the Yankees owner came out and said that he was going to do anything to put the best field, to field the best team for the New York Yankees from this point going forward, and that they would be winning championships pretty much every year, and he pretty much called that right. No doubt about that. So, also, on this day, in 1957, January 5th, 1957, the Dodgers' Jackie Robinson announced his retirement rather than be traded from the Dodgers to the New York Giants. And on this day in 1971, the Harlem Globetrotters actually lost 100-99 to the New Jersey Reds, ending a 2,495 game winning streak. And also on this day in 1993, Reggie Jackson was elected to the Hall of Fame. And finally, on this day in 1996, Miami Dolphins head coach Don Shula announces his retirement following a loss to the Buffalo Bills on Wild Card Weekend. And that is this day in sports history. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the midst of the NFL playoffs right now. And have you won big yet? I have, because I go to BetDSI.com. BetDSI is an A-plus rated sportsbook, and it's been around since 1998. In the last 20 years, they've built an impeccable reputation for great service and fast payment. combined with an excellent mobile interface so you can play, win, and get paid anywhere, anytime. This weekend, I had the Buffalo Bills plus 8.5. 8.5. I couldn't believe that they were giving away that, so I took the Bills plus the 8.5. Now, I know they lost by 3, but I still won because I took the Bills, obviously, plus the 8.5. So I won by 5.5, even though the Bills lost by 3. That's how easy it is to win on BetDSI.com. And if you sign up for a new account today and use my promo code COFFEE, that's COFFEE, BetDSI will double your money up to a $500 deposit. Don't forget, at BetDSI, you can bet on anything. MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, boxing, UFC, and more. Don't stand on the sideline. Just check out my promo code and go to BetDSI, that's BETDSI.com, and use my promo code COFFEE and double your bankroll today. Thanks, BetDSI. All right, so sticking with the football theme here, we talked about the playoffs in the first half of the show. Let's get into a little bit of the locals because we know that they both definitely are in the playoffs, and we'll get to that in 1 second actually. And if you'd like to join us and give me your thoughts on the NFL playoffs or anything that's on your mind, you can give me a call at 516-623-1240. That's 516-623-1240. So getting into this, we'll open up with the Jets, and so a season in review. Let's see, New York Jets. They finished 7-9 this year, which sounds bad because it is. It's another losing season. They've had a losing season every year since 2016, and so it's nothing new, unfortunately, for both these squads. But after a 1-7 start. 7-9 feels, like you at least are moving in the right direction. Do I think Adam Gase is the right coach? No, I don't, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not going to say there's no chance that Adam Gase is the right coach, but I don't think he is. Now let's look at this. Let's make the case for and against everything the Jets have done this season. The one thing I will say, though, before we get into that, is that I got to give Gase credit. He kept this team together. He seemingly did not lose the locker room, even though it seemed like there were some tense moments on the sidelines and tense moments, in press conferences. Like he apparently pissed off Le'Veon Bell last week when he was talking about his contract in a press conference. I still think it seems like Gase has kept the team together and kept that locker room positive, unlike where after the 15 season everything went down the hill when people said that Todd Bowles lost the locker room by like week 2, which is unfortunate because that team could have been better and just wasn't. They were terrible. But so let's take a look at the positives. The positives, let's go. 1, the team won 7 games. So it's the most wins they've had since 2015 when they went 10-6 and choked in Week 17 and missed the playoffs. That's a theme with the Jets over the last 10 years. Choke. Sam Darnold, that's another thing. Sam Darnold had a winning record this year as a starter. They were 0-3 in the 3 games he missed when he had mono, and 7-6 in the games that he started. So it's small. He started 13 games last year, too. He set out the 3 where McCown played when he was a little banged up, quote unquote. I think they were just trying to give the kid a breather. But he played 13 games last year and went 4-9. Played 13 games this year, went 7-6. So, progress. I'll give them that's a step in the right direction. It's a little progress. Aside from that, like we said, they started 1-7, so a strong finish. They had, so we'll just completely take out the Week 17 victory at Buffalo because Buffalo wasn't playing that game. They didn't care. Buffalo had no interest in anybody getting hurt. They were set in the playoffs. They were locked in for their seed in their game. So they had Allen come in, play a couple of series. The Jets won that game 13-6, but it was a very hollow victory. Now let's look at the other ones. I'll give them down the line 2 quality wins. The one against Oakland, because it doesn't matter how Oakland's season finished, they're a good team. Might have been a year ahead of schedule, but that's a good team with a good quarterback, and the Jets just owned them that day, 34-3. They blew them out. It was one of the most complete games I've seen the Jets play in years, to be honest, and very enjoyable from a Jets fan's perspective. But it was too little too often this year, and they put up 34 points, which they did 3 weeks in a row at that point. But so I'll give them that. That was a quality victory against a good team in Oakland, who was hot coming into that game. Now also, the win against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's season was on the line. Pittsburgh wanted to get in the playoffs, and the Jets wanted to keep them out. And the Jets played the role of spoiler pretty well. I got to tip my cap to the Jets in that. No doubt about that. They beat Pittsburgh 16-10. Even though it was looking like there was going to be a lot of terrible towels out there in MetLife Stadium, but the Jets showed up and they took it to them, and you got to give it to them. And Jamal Adams said that one of the reasons that this team really got motivated, besides the regular reasons of pride and wanting to win and collect your paycheck and everything else like that, they got mad in the Oakland game when the Raiders fans booed them when they came out on their field for stretching. On their own field. Because you got to remember, too, the Jets were, one of the worst teams in the league. The Raiders were on an upswing. So there were a lot of Raider fans in MetLife that day. The Jets didn't like that, went out there and spanked them. Same thing with with Pittsburgh. I think a lot of those terrible towels motivated the Jets, pissed them off, and helped them get that victory. One other thing, too, positive. Greg Williams. That guy's a hell of a defensive coordinator. I don't care about the shots he was taking at Brett Favre 10 years ago. And I was a big Favre fan. I didn't like it back then. I didn't like that whole Bounty Gate thing. And my cousin Danny didn't. But, this Greg Williams is a hell of a defensive coach. He had tons of no-names on this team. They lost Avery Williamson in preseason. They lost C.J. Mosley after he had a great first half against the Bills in that game, and then they completely collapsed. So he did a great job with this defense, especially when they didn't have 2 of their biggest and most important pieces, and traded Leonard Williams, their former number 6 overall pick, as well. So you got to factor that in. Big pat on the back to Greg Williams. I wouldn't even look if they fired Adam Gase today and made Greg Williams the head coach. I'd be fine with that, but that's not going to happen. There's a couple of guys I want to point out that I think he had a big, influence on. Neville Hewitt, the linebacker, who looked great, had a bunch of sacks this year. Blake Cashman, the middle linebacker, looked awesome. This guy was, this guy came out of nowhere. And Terrell Basham, too, another guy. Good year. And the last positive I'm going to give out is Jamison Crowder. That was like a really good free agent signing. And the fact that he and Darnold have, a bit of a rapport now, and that they really played well together this year, I think that's going to be good that those two are hit. No doubt about that. So, unfortunately, that's the end of the positives. Let's get to the negatives now. The Jets were the first NFL team in history to lose to 2 winless teams this season, as they lost to the 0-7 Miami Dolphins and the 0-11 Cincinnati Bengals. So, that's not exactly something you want to make history, but not in that way. And speaking of making history, the Jets finished last in total offense for only the second time in the last 50 years. Now that's, one thing too, I will say, because it is a bit of a skewed statistic, because for 3 games they were playing with David Fales and, Trevor Siemian, and no offensive line, and the team could not move the ball. Le'Veon Bell was getting destroyed. That wasn't his fault either, too. Believe me, the guy was playing with his heart on his sleeve. But when you have no offensive line opening holes for you, and everybody knows they're going to hand the ball off because your quarterback stinks, what are you going to do? So, no ill will towards Le'Veon Bell. I hope they bring him back this year, as a matter of fact. But, that remains to be seen. Another thing too is that the offensive line is still terrible, ranked 25th out of 32 from Pro Football Focus this year. Just you need to get that better. I'll say that they'll probably bring back Kelvin Beachum next year, put him at left tackle. I mean, unless they draft a big left tackle, maybe they'll stick Beachum at right. But Beachum will probably come back next year. As for anybody else, I don't know. Maybe Jonathan Harrison sticks around as a backup, but he can't start. You got to get a legit starter in there, and also Alex Lewis. They traded for him from Baltimore before the season started. I wouldn't mind seeing him come back. I don't know if starting in a starting capacity, but he played decent this year. Everybody else has to go. Don't bring back Winters. Get rid of all these guys. Chuma Edoga, the right tackle, he might be okay as a backup. You got to get a starter instead of him. He's a decent player. He's young too, so I'm not saying there's no chance, but at least for next year, you got to bring in a guy, and just let this kid, hopefully get better, or just let him play his way off the team. But another thing too. Now Robbie Anderson's a free agent. Now you got to say to yourself, is this guy worth $12 million a year? Is this guy worth that money? Is this guy worth $14 million a year? Because you might get some team that goes crazy. I mean, if you're saying to yourself, "Oh, we got to have this guy in this team," look, I'm a big fan of Robbie Anderson. On the field, the guy is a heck of a talent, but I don't know if he's worth that kind of money, especially in a cap league where eventually down the line you're going to have to pay Sam Darnold, and you're already paying big money to guys like C.J. Mosley and Jamison Crowder. And it's you're gonna have to pick your battles there. You're gonna have to, especially you have to remember too, you're gonna have to pay Jamal Adams, and they better pay Jamal Adams. This better not be a Darrelle Revis situation where they trade him for garbage. No, you gotta pay Jamal Adams. He's the best safety in the league. He just made his first All-Pro team. Pay the man. I know he might have a big mouth at times, but that's what happens when you're talented and you're 25 years old. Give the kid his money. He deserves it. Le'Veon Bell, another negative, like I said before, the worst season as a pro, under 4 yards a carry for the first time. Like I said, it's not all his fault. I laid out before why he struggled, and I think the Jets didn't use him well at all, too. I mean, I'm sure if you've heard anybody talk about the Jets, they didn't, whether it was just running him up the gut, running him outside, or sticking him on the, using him as a receiver properly. That's one thing that Tomlin and Roethlisberger and those guys over in Pittsburgh knew what they were doing. They knew how to use him. Adam Gase is a guy that just likes to ride his quarterback. He's a guy that needs a gunslinger back there, and he doesn't like using a running back. He's like the Dan Marino offense. That's not winning football in my opinion. You're gonna have to run the ball to win. And you have a great back in Le'Veon Bell. Use him right. That's all you got to do. You also got to put the talent in front of him to open up these routes. So let's just see what the Jets have in store. Hopefully it's not a trade, but you never know with these guys. Mixed messages too. That's another negative that I'd like to say. Because Gase and Joe Douglas, who Joe Douglas is one of these guys that Adam Gase pretty much brought in. I mean, Adam Gase hired him because after Mike McCaggan was fired unceremoniously in May, Gase was the GM for the time period after that, and that's another bad thing. No leadership in the organization. They guaranteed Gase's job back at 2-7. And don't give me too that Gase missed the quarterback for those 3 games too. This was the year of the backup quarterback. Let's be honest here. Every time he turned around, how many games did the Panthers were still winning games with their backup. The Jaguars were still winning games with Minshew mania. Even though Foles went down. So this was the year of the backup. You still had a lot of guys. Don't give me that Darnold got hurt. Well, because as I like Darnold too, but Darnold's not the be-all, end-all. So, there's a lot of bad coaching in there. And you can't just discount that because the guy got hurt. So, just to wrap it up with the Jets, I think unfortunately next year they'll probably be looking for a head coach, but let's just hope I'm wrong because it's been known to happen every once in a while. So I'll be very happy to be wrong on that one. And quickly, as I'm running out of time here, I can't believe that this hour has just flown by. It's been all football so far. I haven't been able to get to anything else. But it was a great weekend of football, so I don't mind it though. So let's go to the Giants real quick as they finished 4-12 this year, 12-36 over the last 3 seasons. 12-36. That is terrible since they lost that game on Wild Card Weekend in Green Bay 3 years ago. Terrible. They fired Pat Shurmur as head coach. He went 9-23 in his run, and now Mara and Tisch in concert with Dave Gettleman, they're going to have to figure out who is going to be the guy to take over this to take over this job, the CEO position, as Gettleman calls it. I think that Mara and Tisch made the right move in keeping Gettleman because I understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand Giants fans why you're angry with him, but let's take a look at this too. Gettleman. Some of the things that Gettleman did good was obviously he drafted Saquon last year over Sam Darnold. Now a lot of people questioned that at the time, including myself, and it's understandable to question it. But when you really look at it, you have to say to yourself, okay, so he went out there and he chose the running back, but he's got to go out and get a quarterback. In an interview that I heard last week with Gettleman, he said his lieutenants, his scouts, his guys told him, Dave, you'll be able to get a quarterback next year. Well, it looks like they were right because they picked Saquon Barkley last year. They got Daniel Jones, number 6 this year. Much maligned pick, even at the time. I was shocked at how much people were flipping out that the Giants picked Daniel Jones 6. Now, it did raise an eyebrow to me. It did make me say, gee, I wonder what they see that nobody else did. But to sit here and go crazy because you thought they could have got him a couple of picks later. Look, the fact is that this is the guy Gettleman thought was the guy he wanted to put his faith in going forward. And I respect that. And, I think they got a couple of other good guys in this draft too. Don't forget, they got Dexter Lawrence in that first round too. A couple other guys, Darius Slayton, that receiver, that guy looks like a stud. He can stretch the field. Julian Love, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, he looks like a player. Ryan Conley, a lot of people forgot about him, but he's the linebacker who got hurt earlier this year. He looks like he could be a player as well. Speaking of players getting hurt, that's where you go on the negative side of this year, as Evan Ingram looks like the tight end. He's one of these guys that just can't stay on the field. Another negative was the 9-game losing streak. Tied for the longest in franchise history. First time they've lost 9 in a row since 1976. Very, very tough stats there when you really look at it and break it down. Somehow it could have been worse too. If you look at it, this team was 4-12. They were a couple of plays away from being 2-14 because they only won against the Buccaneers because they shanked the field goal as time expired, and then they ended up pulling one out of their butt after they blew it in against the Redskins in D.C. in Week 16. So the Giants could have been picking first, or close to it at least. It would have been first or second with the Cincinnati. So, but they were able to salvage that win against the Skins. So that was the last victory that Shurmur had as a head coach. The defense is terrible too. They allowed 30-plus points 9 times this season. It's got to change if you want to win in this league. You can't allow 30 points that many times and expect to come out on top. Unless you got an offense like the Saints or one of those great teams. Another negative was that Saquon was good this year, but not great. They need him to be great, especially if you pick him at number 2. He had a great year, his first year, his rookie season. Not this year. Obviously, injuries played a role. I'm not going to say they didn't because obviously they did. And Saquon, you just got to hope that he comes back next season healthy and looks like that Hall of Fame-bound running back that we saw last season. And also one other thing is that Aldrich Rojas, their kicker, they took a big step back this season. He was 32 out of 33 last year, made the Pro Bowl. He's only 12 of 17 this year. In this league, too, you got to have a guy that can kick. You got to have a guy you can depend on. And kicking across the league this season was atrocious, but the Giants guy took a big step back. As for the guys the Giants have interviewed so far for their head coaching position, they've interviewed Don Martindale, the defensive coordinator from Baltimore, Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator from Kansas City, Mike McCarthy, former head coach of Green Bay, Chris Richard, the Dallas defensive backs coach, and also in that mix too on the peripheral is Jason Garrett, who might get an interview. We never know. He just got fired today, so I guess we'll see. There's a chance though that Dallas could retain him and keep him in some kind of higher up position. Figure it out there. But his contract does expire. Well, actually, he's been fired anyway as the head coach, but they could always stick him somewhere else. And also, a name that a lot of Giants fans are hoping for is Matt Rule, the head coach of Baylor, who, by the way, carries a $15 million price tag if the Giants want to go after him, because the Giants, the college put that in his contract as kind of a fail-safe. So if they lose him, they don't lose that much. They gain a few million, a couple of shekels in the bank too. So you got to give that's a savvy move by that organization too. And to be honest, maybe I might be proven completely wrong about this, but Matt Rule doesn't blow me away enough to pay a $15 million price tag for him. I'm sorry. So the Giants have a lot to figure out there. A lot on their table. 2020. There's a lot of decisions to make for both these New York football teams, and if we're going to be seeing playoff football a year from now, they got to be making a lot of right decisions, especially starting now when you're hiring coaches, and and the Jets too. I'm sure there's going to be some changes on their coaching staff. They're not, they're going to keep Gase, but maybe some coaches on the peripheral. Hopefully, I would personally love to see Bill Callahan come in from the Redskins, who was their coach down the stretch after they fired their head coach. I would like to see Callahan come in and be the offensive line coach again. He was the offensive line coach under Rex Ryan all those years ago. So it would be nice to see him come back to the organization, because that line is a mess, and a guy like him working in unison with Joe Douglas, who's another offensive line guy, as their GM, hopefully that lets them straighten out the mess that this offensive line has been really ever since DeBrickshaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold called it a career. So we'll see what happens with that. And now that I'm down to just a minute or two left here, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to touch quick on the Mets and the Yankees. I think it's a great job, just a fantastic job by the Mets signing Dylan Betances. I really didn't think that they were going to do it. I thought he was going to Baltimore with to Philadelphia with Joe Girardi, and I thought that it was going to be just another guy that left New York to go to Philly, and now a guy that the Mets had a chance to get. And there's a couple of guys in that team too. A lot of Met fans wanted to sign Bryce Harper. They didn't do that. A lot of Met fans wanted to bring back Zach Wheeler. He went to Philadelphia. They wanted to trade for JT Realmuto. Now he's their catcher. You're starting to see a trend here. And not to mention too, a lot of guys. I heard a lot of Met fans talking about signing Didi Gregorius and either moving Rosario or trading him. That's another guy also in Philadelphia now. So you really. It makes you feel good that the Mets brought in this guy Betances. Like I said, he's got quite the track record. Had a little banged up this year with the injuries, so you got to hope he can bounce back. But the Mets are open for a lot of bounce backs this year. But they could be one of these. It could really be one end of the spectrum to the other. One of the worst bullpens in the league, or one of the best. So you just got to hope that. That Brody gets a couple of breaks, and with the Yankees, it's all gravy at this point. With Garrett Cole, I think it would be a great move for them to maybe add. I thought they were going to go after a guy like Will Harris and stick another guy in the bullpen, but the Yankees don't seem inclined to do that. But just like I said before, you've got. You got Garrett Cole. You've won the offseason already. Everything else is running downhill, and now we're just a month away from spring training. I can't wait. I think I said the other day it was 50 days away. 50 days away to the first day of pitches of spring training, and we're less than that before pitchers and catchers report. So that's starting to make me feel warm right here anyway. And but with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be running down here.